Hey YouTube, it's Dave from Military Money Mastery. Thanks so much for tuning in. Today we're going to be going over a military home buying guide. We're going to go over some things I look for when I'm buying a house, and it's something that can definitely help you out and something that can help out tons of military members. So the first thing we're going to go over is when should I look to buy? And there's actually reasons why you should and shouldn't buy in certain times and locations and whatnot. We're going to break down some of those reasons. Can I actually afford the home? You know, there's tons of things that in your budget that you really need to factor in to figure out if, you know, buying a home is right for you. And then should I buy or rent? I know this is kind of a topic of discussion. I know some people have different opinions on it, but this is something that you really need to break down and learn for yourself. Now I'm not saying that I'm not going to teach you how to do it, but it's something that varies depending on the person. You know, are you the right kind of person to buy? Or are you the right kind of person to rent? You know, and when is a good time for you to buy or rent? That's something that we're going to break down. This is a super awesome video. I'm super excited to bring it to you guys. It's something that's going on personally in my life, and I think it's something that can help you guys out too. All right, so let's go over the military home buying guide. So the first thing we're going to talk about is when should I be looking for a house to purchase? I hate to say it, but you know, I kind of have to throw this out there. If you're living in barracks and you have no plans on getting out of the barracks, you know, maybe you shouldn't be looking to buy a house, because you know you probably want that BH to help supplement your income. But now that that's out of the way, let's move on to when you should be buying a home. So there's a few things to be considering. You know, how much longer do you have in the military? Are you close to retirement, or did you just get in? Are you planning on getting out this year? It could be kind of a tricky situation. I'd advise against anybody buying a home if they're planning on getting out next year, unless you already have something lined up, something that will, you know, pay you as much as the military does. And I know it's kind of hard, but most people don't actually realize how much the military pays them, especially with, you know, BH and BS and whatnot. I'm not saying that you can't do it. You just need to realize like how much money you're actually going to be making on the outside. You know, $20 an hour might sound great, but what is that going to hit you for in taxes? And you know, like how much is that going to cover your house, and how much is that going to cover your bills? So that's something to look over before looking at buying a home. Secondly, so have you started a budget? I know I harp on this a lot, but just because you have, you know, BH whatever doesn't necessarily mean that you can afford a house. You know, if you're renting and most of your rent money is just going towards bills, because you know the BH pays over your rent, you know, maybe buying a home isn't going to help that. So that's something to look into, and you know, it's actually pretty beneficial to do one of these budgets. It really helps out, and you're gonna have to do it with your loan officer anyway before you even get a loan. So so this one kind of ties into that, but what does your credit look like? You know, like how good's your credit score? Do you have debtors? Have you made some problems for yourself in the past? I know I did, and it kind of screwed me up at first, and now everything's doing good. But you know, maybe if you have, you know, poor credit, it's not the time to be getting into, you know, a huge loan like this. I know it looks good because you're like, oh, the interest rate's pretty low, you know, 1% here, 1% there, doesn't really matter. It does, especially on like a $300,000 or $400,000 house. Or sometimes, you know, if you're in California, you're looking at $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 homes. You know, this is huge, and even 1% can just massively change your monthly payments. So that's something to look into. Also, you know, lastly, as on this topic, you know, what's the real estate market like? Property values on the decline. You know, maybe you can swing in there and pick up a good deal. You know, if properties are on the rise, you know, maybe it's a good time to buy before the peak in the real estate market. But you know, are you willing to time that? I know I personally am not, but you know, maybe that's something to look into too. You know, what's the reason why it's on the decline, and what's the reason why it's on the rise? That's also something to look into. Is gentrification going on in the community, you know, and you're trying to buy a property for dirt cheap, and you know that it's going to go up in the future. So that's something to really look into. For the most part, most properties will appreciate in value. I'd say like a vast majority of properties are going to appreciate in value, but it's still a risk, you know, like even though real estate's pretty safe, it is still a risk. Don't confuse that. So next we're going to go over, can I actually afford this home? I know we kind of touched on it earlier, but make sure you factor everything into your budget, like everything. It's huge. Don't lie to yourself and say that you have enough. I know some people go through the budget. It's like, oh, you know, I only spend like $350 on groceries per month, or I only spend $150 on gas. Gas, cigarettes, alcohol are the three biggest things on budgets that people lie about, and it's usually some of the larger costs. So make sure that you really factor those in. I personally think it's a good idea to overestimate on things as far as your budget goes. If it's like, if we typically spend, you know, $600 a month in groceries, just my wife and I, then I'll set my budget for like $650 or $700 just in case something else comes into play. You know, what if we find something we really like, or, you know, say we run out of tons of stuff one week and then we have to buy it all back, you know, like I have to buy like 2 more pounds of bacon and a bunch more eggs, or, you know, milk and breads and all those kind of things. Those really play a huge part into your budget. So that's why I always think it's a good idea to kind of overestimate it. So something to go into with the cost of the home, it's like, okay, so what do the property taxes look like? So make sure that you look into what the property taxes were on a home, you know, the last few years, and see what the rise or fall have been. And you can do this if you're looking on Zillow or whatnot. That you click on I think it's like price tax lots, and you can look and see what the taxes have been on that property for the last few years. So it's something to look into. That way it'll tell you, it'll help to estimate what your monthly payments are going to be on the home. So another one is, what's your insurance on the home going to be? It's something else that can also be factored into your monthly payments, and make sure that the insurance plan is right for you. So don't just go out there and buy something cheap because it's cheap. You know, make sure that it's actually something that's going to fit all of your needs. You know, make sure that, you know, they accept pets, and make sure that your pet fits into that right one. That's a huge one, especially for dogs. If you have anything that they deem, you know, aggressive breeds or whatnot. So make sure that you look into that first too, because if you do have one of those, you know, aggressive breeds, whatever, I personally have a pit bull, and she's the greatest thing in the world. I don't understand why people think that they're not, but as far as the insurance company goes, she's a vicious killer, which I don't think so. But you know, that's something to look into too. So another thing is, you know, what are the closing costs on the house going to be? Make sure you get a straight answer from your real estate agent, and if you don't understand, please ask them. If there's anything that you don't understand on the loan, just ask. You know, like, they're there. The real estate agent is there to work with you. I mean, yes, they're trying to sell you a home, they're trying to make commission, but they're working for you. So if you have a question, you don't understand anything, just ask. You know, like, don't be afraid to just call them up and be like, hey, you know, I don't understand what this payment is, or hey, I don't understand what we're doing next. You know, make sure that you ask them the questions that you're unsure about. Don't have pride and just be like, oh, you know, sure, I understand what they said. Just make sure that you realize that kind of thing. Also, don't necessarily take them at their word. You know, make sure that you do your own research as well. There's tons of things that, you know, my real estate agent told me that I looked up on my own, you know, that she didn't really explain as well as I wanted to know. She gave me a brief rundown, but it was ultimately my responsibility to learn these kind of things. So I took it upon myself to learn more, and it really benefited me. The earnest money deposit that you have to pay, it's what some of the closing costs are if you're the buyer, can really throw some people off. You know, you're not really expecting to have to put any money down, because you're like, oh, VA loan is 0% down. You still have to put down some sort of earnest money. So that's something to look into too. Also, you know, shop for deals on your loan. You know, don't just settle for the first loan that you're offered. You know, there's tons of people who go out there and it's like, oh, you know, I put in for a loan at such and such bank and they gave me this percent and that's what we're going with. It's like, no, this is a big time investment. You need to be searching around for the best possible loan. Even like a 0.25% can mean, you know, thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars over the 30-year lifetime of this loan. So it's something that you really need to look into. Make sure you shop around for the best deal. You know, there are tons of companies that this is all they do, is they just shop around for home loans or just loans in general, and make sure that you utilize them if you're unsure where to go. It can help tons, I promise. So lastly on this topic, just because you're approved for a certain amount in your loan doesn't necessarily mean that you should be taking out that loan. Take your time and find the right house for you. Don't rush into buying something just because that isn't a good deal, you know? Like, don't just rush into something because it's the first house you buy or the second house you buy, or it's like, oh, this is our dream home. It's like, for most military members, you're not going to end up living in this home for the rest of your life. Unless you plan on retiring at where you are, you know, you may not actually live in this home for the rest of your life. So don't just settle on something because it's, you know, your dream home or whatever. Be patient. Be very patient. I think the house that we're looking in, we waited for about 6-7 months before we finally pulled the trigger on it. But you need to be patient and look for something that's within your budget and will fit the needs that you have. Just because the loan officer says you're approved for, you know, like $500,000 or whatever, doesn't mean that that's what you should spend. That just means that's what you're capped at. And even then, you can probably fudge on it a little bit. But, you know, just because they say that you can afford a $500,000 house doesn't necessarily mean you can. This is why going through the budget is super important. All right, so the last point we're going to go over is, should I buy or rent? And I know that we've kind of listened to all this, and it's something to go over. You know, should I actually buy or rent? And we kind of explained or talked about some of the things in previous slides, but it's something that can really go both ways, and it really depends on who you are and what you're comfortable with. On one hand, I think that it's more profitable in the long run to actually buy, personally, but I can see the benefits of both. You know, the biggest benefit to renting is you're not actually liable for anything in the house. Well, for most things in the house, obviously, if you ruin something, you're pretty liable for it. But you know, if you're an owner, you're liable for that $10,000 roof, or replacing the flooring, or, you know, the fridge dies, you have to buy a new refrigerator. There's tons of stuff that you're actually liable for. And the benefit of owning a home is it actually can be an asset. If you rent it or sell it for more than you bought it for. So make no mistake that your home is not actually an asset until you start making money on it. If you're paying for something and you're not making a profit on it, then it's not actually an asset. Your loan officers, your bankers, tons of people will tell you, oh, you know, your home's an asset. It's not. It really isn't. If you're paying on something, it's a liability. It's not an asset. I know it seems kind of weird, and trust me, it's not. Another awesome benefit to owning a home is capital you accrue, or you know, the gain over years, can then be put into a home that you actually want to retire in. You know, like if you buy 2, 3, 4 houses while you're in the military, you know, you sell all 4 of those houses in order to, you know, afford this awesome house that you plan on retiring in. That's something cool too. Or even, you know, buying property and building the house that you want to do. That's what we're looking forward to. But you know, I digress. Like, something to do with you know, buying is, you know, how handy are you around the house? You know, can you know, repair a door by yourself? Can you put in a new refrigerator by yourself? Can you lay down tile? Can you know, clean the gutters, or, you know, fix vents? And most of the stuff isn't really that hard. You can look on YouTube anywhere and find tons of videos of people showing you how to do, you know, anything practically around the house, and you can pretty much figure it out. So, you know, are you willing to be doing that? So, to break it down, you know, should you really buy or rent? And it really depends on you. Go over the topics that I kind of talked about earlier, and about what you can afford. If you can't, then, you know, maybe it's a good time to rent instead of buy. You know, make sure that, you know, even if you're renting, you're still putting money away for when you eventually do want to buy. You know, maybe you don't want to buy. Maybe you just want to rent for the rest of your life, and that's totally fine. You know, if that's what you want to do, that's cool. But make sure that you're willing to go down that avenue. Yeah. So for the future episodes, the next episode I want to talk about real quick is I'd like to start going over the stock market and how to read stocks and what you should be looking for when you're investing. I think it's actually a pretty crucial point to increasing your net worth, and can be a great tool for learning about the market. I think it's something that most people don't really understand. They just kind of think, oh, you know, these big fat cats down at Wall Street do it, you know, and that's their game. They go to school for it. It's like, I promise you, it's really not that hard. I do it, and I mean, I don't really have that much training. Like,
I do it, and I do very well. At least I think I do well. But it's really not that hard. You know, just look into it, spend a few minutes, spend a few hours learning something that could, you know, make you thousands of dollars, or if not millions of dollars in the long run. You know, I'm being optimistic here and saying, yeah, you can make millions in the stock market, but it really depends on you. You know, are you willing to learn? Are you willing to invest? Are you willing to risk? So anyway, thanks everyone for tuning in. I really appreciate you for tuning in. Please hit that like and subscribe button. It helps so much, I promise. Like with the YouTube algorithms, if you hit that like button, it takes 2 seconds. Just hit that like button, and it really helps out the channel, helps get this message out to other military members that, you know, may have questions. If they have any questions, you know, feel free to send them my way. I'm always on posting on Reddit and my Facebook page, so just tell them to hit me up, and we can talk about anything. I've been Dave from Military Money Mastery. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next video.